Yes, after so many years, Bayern Munich spent an entire season without winning a single title. They lost the Bundesliga to Xabi Alonso's fantastic Leverkusen, lost the DFB Pokal to humble Saarbrücken from Germany's third division, and were knocked out of the UEFA Champions League semi-final to Real Madrid. Harry Kane curse? Tuchel's mismanagement? Let's comment on how this all started. Bayern Munich, until recently, was called the German juggernaut, especially after the German team's resounding 7-1 victory in 2014. The team really lived up to its nickname with absurd victories, such as 8-0, 7-0, 12-0 in the local cups, and the famous 8-2 against Barcelona. It was a feared team, not only during Hans Flick's management, but also during the Guardiola era, where it was considered the best squad on the planet with high-quality options on the bench. Nowadays, when you find out there's a Bayern game, expectations aren't as high and the opposing team doesn't feel that fear and respect on the field that they used to see. This is the story of how Tuchel destroyed Bayern's powerful aura and why he hasn't worked in Bavarian command, at least so far. So, he already changes his real world, and to stand Tuchel's arrival at Bayern Munich, we need to mention the departure of a young guy who was very promising and who preceded the entry of the older German, Julian Nagelsmann. He is a young and very promising coach. He had been doing an excellent job at Leipzig with the team playing very well, and it was no surprise that Bayern Munich paid his termination fine and Nagelsmann became the most expensive coach in history, with a contract worth 5 years, which is not very common for this role. So, Bayern's management really trusted him and seemed to have studied and planned a lot before making this decision. The strong names in this signing were Oliver Kahn, the club's idol as a goalkeeper and who was in the role of executive president, and the sporting director at the time, Hassan Salihamidzic. He arrived with a lot of expectations and Bayern was far from being a bad team. His first Bundesliga season was very similar to Hans Flick's last. He was champion with just 1 point less, he had just one more defeat and one less goal scored. This made expectations for Nagelsmann increase even more, as he managed to maintain the good football of Flick's team, and the results came in the National League. In the Champions League, Bayern fell into a group that wasn't the easiest and simply won every game, falling disappointingly to Villarreal. In that match, the Spanish club exposed how this team could be disorganized defensively and suffered a lot in counterattacks. Bayern have always been better offensively than defending, and even in previous Champions League clashes against Real Madrid, this was evident. However, this defeat to Villarreal did not erase the club's season, and expectations for the next one remained high. In 2022-23, history was repeating itself. A good start to the Bundesliga, reaching round 20 with just one defeat. In the Champions League, they again managed to be much superior in the games and had 100% success in the group stage. In the round of 16 against PSG, in February, the team passed smoothly, being better in both games. In the Bundesliga, they were still in first place, but a defeat in the 25th round dropped the team to second place, 1 point behind Borussia Dortmund. It was after this match that Nagelsmann was fired from Bayern, and Thomas Tuchel took his place. It was a surprise for everyone, as was Tuchel's departure from Chelsea. The official reason for this change was to maintain the chances of achieving the Triple Crown this season. Well, that's what was said. The first point is that it really is another reality, right? The guys are very unaccustomed. It can't be easy to work at Bayern Munich. They have become accustomed to winning throughout the season, and any slip-up or slight error in their style of play is already a reason to change and someone to be fired, even though they are doing well in all the competitions played. Not that I really believe that was the main reason, but it resonated with the fans. Anyway, Bayern's interest in Tuchel wasn't new. In 2018, they had already tried to hire the coach who had allegedly already spoken with Rummenigge, but Bayern's president decided to keep the legend Jupp Heynckes at the club, and Tuchel ended up going to PSG the following year. Returning to the current season, there were rumors of interest from Tottenham and Real Madrid in the German coach, and it seems that with Tottenham there were even conversations that he would be the main name to replace Antonio Conte. Bayern, seeing that they could once again be without their former interest, moved quickly to sign him. This was also one of the reasons. The leader's fear of losing Tuchel again and being left with that feeling of, what if? Did they miss a big chance? But man, in terms of strategy and planning, this was horrible. It's okay that Tuchel arrived in the middle of the season and won the Champions League with Chelsea, but they offered Nagelsmann a 5-year contract, treating him as the future of the club and saying that there was a long-term project around the young man. Promising. To give you a brief idea of how absurd and unthinkable this decision was, 4 days before the dismissal, Bayern president Herbert Hainer had made a statement praising Nagelsmann, saying that tactically he was very good and revolutionary. In contrast to rumors that the players were questioning the coach's tactical choices and were supposedly no longer interested in the job, he said that Nagelsmann was very good tactically and that the club had done the planning for him. For days later, he was being fired. It's unbelievable. It's amateurish. Of course, no story has just one side, and Nagelsmann is not entirely innocent. Some fans questioned his lack of tactical variation in games when he needed to get out of adverse situations, such as in the defeat to Bayern Leverkusen that made the team lose the lead. Supposedly, he also had a part in Lewandowski's departure. The Pole had declared his desire to leave the club at the end of Flick's tenure, but there are rumors that Nagelsmann may have had a hand in that decision. I don't know if in any conversation with the player he said something that was an impasse between the two, or if his game idea didn't involve a center forward with Lewandowski's characteristics. When Lewandowski left, he declared that it was his dream to play in La Liga and that there were no problems with Bayern. But, come to think of it, he spent 8 seasons at Bayern. So why didn't he leave sooner if that was his dream? I don't think there would be a lack of opportunities for Lewandowski either at Barca or Real. He was the best striker in the world for 2 seasons. Unless his agent was a fool, he would be able to find a place in La Liga. Another point that may have damaged Nagelsmann's relationship with the players was the episode involving the goalkeeper trainer. Nagelsmann fell out with Tapalovic, a goalkeeper trainer who had been at the club since 2011 and was a good friend of Manuel Neuer. The main reason for this rupture, according to findings, was that Nagelsmann didn't like the way he worked and thought he prioritized Neuer too much to the detriment of the other goalkeepers, which is why they didn't have the expected evolution. At that time, the club had signed Sommer to fill the absence of Neuer, who was injured. This episode certainly damaged the coach's relationship with the group of players. There was certainly no relationship with Neuer after that, and as dressing rooms around the world are divided, other players certainly took sides in this situation. Now, arriving at Tuchel, he was hired to boost the chances of a triple crown, according to Oliver Kahn's interview. In his first game, he would already have his first trial by fire, the duel against Borussia Dortmund worth the leadership of the Bundesliga. In this case, Tuchel beat his former club quite calmly, and everything seemed to go well. Soon afterwards, in the first game of the German Cup, the team was eliminated by Freiburg in the quarterfinals. In the Champions League, Bayern still beat PSG, but met their rival Manchester City in the quarterfinals and ended up being eliminated in a game that became known as the game where the Bavarians fell apart. Remember the Tapalovic episode 1 mentioned earlier? He appeared again. After the game, Main and Sane had an argument that almost ended in a fight and, according to reports, Main even punched Sane in the face, leaving him with a cut on his lip. In that match, Tuchel was sent off for complaining to the referee. Under Tuchel's command, Bayern followed poorly in the Bundesliga and was very incompetent in the final rounds. But luckily Borussia Dortmund was also incompetent and Bayern managed to win the last match of the championship, taking the title in dramatic fashion. The coach, who was hired to boost the chances of a treble, almost left Bayern without a title this season. Speaking specifically about Tuchel's work, he was unable to show a good performance with the team, even in his first games. He even tried to make some tactical changes in decisive games and in some Bundesliga rounds, changing the formation to a 4-1-4-1, with Kimmich as the first midfielder, but the style didn't adapt and the pieces didn't work. With that, he started changing players from their positions, something that bothered the athletes. Some changes at the last minute, such as placing Pavard at left back, which is completely different from the player's characteristics. He also tried to turn Kimmich into a number 10, but it didn't work. He even changed the defense, leaving De Ligt out and improvising Kimmich as a defender alongside Pavard. These changes in player roles and tactical changes on the eve of important games took away the squad's confidence and did nothing to help the team's performance. Tuchel's time at PSG was also quite turbulent and reflects some of what has been happening at Bayern. He had relationship problems with some players, and at Bayern this happened again. Furthermore, he cannot establish a game identity and his style does not fit with the pieces he has. This is a problem because, at Bayern, he has a very high-level squad and the demand is enormous. The team needs to have a standard and regularity that it has not been able to implement so far. What it seems is that he can no longer make the transition from role to field, and his idea doesn't resonate with the players. This will hurt the team a lot this season, because the lack of trust between the coach and the squad will only get worse. Anyway, I hope this analysis has helped you better understand Bayern's scenario with Tuchel's arrival and how it affected the club. The change of coach was a controversial decision that, so far, has not brought the expected results.